All right, Go for Show community. Talent opens the door, but confidence, self awareness, communication, and emotional intelligence decide who actually busts through them. Today's guest, Netta, is here to share with you some incredible wisdom of what she's been able to do in the marketplace. Netta, welcome to the Go for Show channel. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm great, John. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Well, look, we always like to start with kind of ideation. Obviously, you've got some cool books behind you. You're actually portrayed on the Rise Up one there, and what a great background and setup that
Thank
you've
you.
set up. So you obviously are intentional about the way you do things. But where did it start? Did it come from a family background, the entrepreneurship? Were you a corporate person for a while? So give us a little bit of that insight initially.
Yeah, definitely didn't come from the family. So my first career I ever had, I was a performer, actually, John. I used to tour the world internationally as a singer and dancer and do musical theater. That was like the first love for me. And quickly after that, I moved on to becoming an executive for an education corporation and a professor in the evening. So I realized through performing that what I really loved about being on stage was building that human connection, right? Especially with audience members that couldn't speak English. Like I was touring in Russia, Japan, everywhere. But what I will tell you and what I realize is that in every industry that I've ever been in, whether it was being a professor, whether it was being an executive at 27, performing on stage, that the biggest gap and challenge that I saw always came down to people skills. When I was an executive, I had team members that had PhDs, master's degrees, and I had to fire them not because they weren't competent, they were very competent, they were genius a lot of times, but because they lacked the ability to be self aware, to communicate in a way that was effective, to lead their team, to build relationships in the community. They had poor self management and poor behaviors. And those are the things that not only pushed them out of an opportunity, but created a lack of fulfillment. And I have seen this across.
Okay, so you were talking about leadership?
Yeah, so I was an executive and I was a professor, and this is where I recognized that this is where the biggest gap was. And so that's what kind of got me interested into what I do today, which is Rise Up For You, where we teach soft skills. But I didn't have any plan on building a business. I didn't know anything about entrepreneurship. I stepped into entrepreneurship accidentally, honestly. And I think a lot of people do sometimes. So, after being an executive for many years, I decided to resign from the company. I moved out of the country for an opportunity called love, called marriage. And on the first day of my honeymoon, my husband said he wanted a divorce. I lost everything. I went from a six-figure
Oh, wow.
executive. Yeah. I went from a six-figure executive to $100 to luggage. My father had just recently passed away when I was 27. Came back to California, was completely in shock, did not know what was happening, resigned from the position, sold all my belongings. So I was really at the bottom. And I just started building this company, Rise Up For You. Didn't know anything about entrepreneurship, knew nothing about business, but I took a chance on myself. 3 months later, my second parent, my mom, was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and 9 months later, she died. So by the time I was
Wow.
31, I was going through a divorce, lost all my money, buried my second parent, and I was buying my groceries at the 99-cent store. I had a $25 a month budget. But I tell you that story because the skills that we teach today, the soft skills, are the same skills that I used on myself to pick myself back up to now build a seven-figure business that has clients all over the world. We have a team of about 18 individuals that coach and train, and we have clients all over the world, everything from Google down to local nonprofits. And I still don't have a business degree, and I started with only $100. The reason why I share that again is because these are the skills that often go overlooked. We think we have to spend so much time, money, and energy on building technical skills, which are important, but they're not going to get you to what I always say: be seen, be heard, and be relevant.
I love it. It's a lot of determination, a lot of resourcefulness came out of these situations that happened to you, right? And in some cases, you learn to say, okay, what's for me at this point?
Yeah.
What has allowed me to get to this point where I can be a pivot into where I'm in my life? And I mean, dramatic, nonetheless. All right. So at 27, you had risen pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
And do you feel like there was something just that there's always been a fire about you? Because even off screen, when we were just getting ready to start recording, I could feel an intensity about you. I could feel a little bit of like, all right, let's roll. Let's get this thing going. So I'm just curious where that's coming from, or has it been this fight stage where you had these losses and this impactful thing that happened with a dissolved marriage? Did that create the person that you
Good
are now?
question. Good
So,
question. All of the above. So I've always been, when I look back and I reflect on my childhood and my past, I've always been driven, period. And I attest that to my parents. Even when I was in high school, I was in all three choirs. I was the president of the choir. I was the varsity, team captain. I got straight A's. I was part of the student council because I've always been taught by my father and my mother, why not? Like when you wake up in the morning, put your best foot forward and why sell yourself short. So if there was something I was interested in or I wanted to do it, I would just do it. I never wanted to be less than for myself. It was always about me being the best that I could be for myself. And so I've always kind of had that. My brothers have it too. And then, when I was 27 and I became an executive, I climbed the career ladder very fast because of the same aspect of just putting my best foot forward, not for anybody else, but for me. And that's really the key because that's the sustainable part, right? When you push yourself for other people, people come and go in your life. That's an external validation that can leave in 1 second. But when you do it for yourself, you're the one constant thing in your life. And so I've always had that drive, but losing my parents and going through the divorce and losing everything unlocked something deeper in me that I knew I had, but I didn't really understand how to do it or why I should do it. And then I remember when my second parent died and I was standing in the closet. I'm the only girl, so I got all of her bags and jewelry and stuff. I just remember thinking, what does it mean to truly build the life that you're proud of? And what does success
mhm.
mean? And so that's where I decided, you know what? I'm going to rebuild my life on my own terms. And what does that look like for me? And that's how I went.
I love it. I love it. So look, you know, out of the ashes comes a phoenix a lot of times, the ones that want to do something and create some sort of action, right?
Yeah.
And obviously you had a little bit of grieving time and trying to think, okay, maybe what happened with this marriage? I don't understand, that type of clarity that came hopefully
Sure.
after time of reflection. But now to get into business that is in a business that a lot of times people that have 20, 30 years of business experience and certain competencies that they've built up through their career is pretty interesting because you were still in your late 20s, early 30s, building something of a brand and all these types of things. So where did you start to glean on mentorship or people that were helping you in this rise that you were trying to put together?
So that's a really good question. So I would say that I leaned more on mentorship from a business perspective. So I chose an industry that I was pretty well versed in even at 31. So when I was 31, I was already teaching at the college for 7 years soft skills, right? And I
Mm,
was teaching emotional intelligence, and I was learning that like these there was a gap here. I had also had years touring internationally where I mean, that will build your emotional intelligence really fast. When you're touring in a country like Russia where nobody speaks English, and there's a perception that we're taught in America, right? And then going there and relearning and learning how to communicate with people that are in Russia, Japan, everywhere that didn't speak the language. So when I started building the business, what I knew was the competencies. What I knew was the expertise of the business. What I didn't know was business. Which I think people often forget when they build a business, that like there's really two things that you need to be an expert at: the industry itself and then the art of building a business, selling, getting your product out there, and what that looks like. And so right away I used my credit card right away to go to a business mastermind and to figure out like what's happening here. When I first started my business, I didn't even know who Tony Robbins was. I like almost vomited when I found out that people made $50,000 to speak on stage for 45 minutes. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like the whole world was new to me. I didn't even know what a podcast was. And so I didn't have a lot of money because I lost everything, but my mentors were like podcast, right? I took a chance. I spent some money on a conference in Las Vegas. I went there and I just started to learn business itself.
Hmm. So were you a bit of a disciple of Tony Robbins? Did you go through Awaken the Giant Within or something like that? Or
No, no, I
okay.
actually, so I'm in year 7 of the business. And I actually, for the first time ever, went to a Tony Robbins event a few months ago.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, look, he's the GOAT, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, he learned from Jim Rome, so
Yeah.
we all come from somewhere.
Yeah.
But to be where he's come to, and
Yeah.
right now, I think his biggest focus is teaching people like owning businesses in strategic ways and having equity, building partnerships, and all those types of things. I caught a
Yeah.
few of the last talks that he had. So, all right, so you're on this journey. Obviously, these tragic things happen to you in your life. You start to build a business. You need some mentorship. But okay, so the platform that you decided to rise up with, no pun intended, what did that mean to you? Like, who are you going to serve? What problem were you solving?
Yeah. Well, I knew from, again, my career path that this was the problem because, like, when I was an executive, I spent a lot of time solving people problems, a lot, right? Versus like trying to scale the business and the corporation, building relationships in the community. And then when I would go to the college and teach, I would have freshmen would rather take an F than raise their hand and ask a question because they didn't want to look dumb.
Mm,
So when I, had to rebuild myself, I had to self-reflect and I had to ask myself, what is a need? And I knew this was a need. I'm like, this for sure is a need. What am I good at? And then what could it potentially look like? So I knew what the need was. And then I went to 5 people and I asked them, like, what do you think I'm good at? And a lot of they all said the same thing. They said I was really good at teaching because they had been like students of mine or they have seen me teach, and that I had a lot of like I was good with confidence. So I was like, okay, so I'm good at teaching. I'm good with confidence. I know how to build curriculum, and the soft skills are the things that we need. So that's where I started to kind of formulate what it looks like. It started with individuals, just like coaching one to one. And then it was during the time, believe it or not, it was like right before COVID, right before COVID, like we were barely starting when the Kavanaugh case happened. I don't know if you remember, it was like
mm,
hashtag me too, and everything
mhm.
was happening. And I had a company call me and say, we really do not know how to navigate from a corporate perspective some of the challenges that are happening between men and women, psychological safety. What do we do, and how can we support this? And that's really what unlocked in my brain, which was like, okay, like these skills, I need to package them and we need to bring them into the workforce. And then COVID hit, and from there it just took off. And so today we work with companies all over the world where essentially we build their leadership academy focused on only 4 main soft skills: self-confidence, emotional and social intelligence, how to be a transformative leader versus transactional, and then influential communication. And people work with us for years, or they can hire us just for a 1-day retreat.
Interesting. So the modeling of the business started to solidify itself, and as you were going, but
Yeah.
I mean, obviously before this company, came to you and this Kavanaugh thing was happening, you had already kind of been doing some things, obviously teaching and
Yeah.
some other areas, and maybe you were approached to do some coaching on the side and stuff like that. So that formation of going from kind of professor teacher to coach to then witnessing yourself become a real business, was it the hiring that started to make the business, or was it for you the actual engagement of clients and what you were doing to help them?
It was the positioning, to tell you the truth, because a lot of business is positioning. It's how do you get your
Mhm.
message out there and what languaging are you using to make it different? So I'll give you a prime example. Like the first few networking events that I went to, and I like absolutely despise networking when I first started because I'm actually quite introverted, right? By nature, I'm an introvert, but I use my emotional intelligence to be extroverted when I need to be. Like obviously this podcast, and you and I are talking and building a connection. My brain is like, okay, like we're in a space now where I need to turn on, not where I need to be passive. It won't serve the conversation we're having. So the first time I went to networking event, I realized that, well, damn, there's a lot of leadership coaches, right? Everyone's like, I'm a leadership coach. I'm a leadership coach. I mean, even today, I'm a leadership coach. So that's when I realized that if I want to be seen and really start to get some clientele, I have to position myself in a more unique way. And so I started to change my language, for example, and say, how many of us as business owners are spending a lot of time, money, and energy trying to solve people problems, lack of communication, poor emotional and social intelligence, a lack of soft skills? Then I would start to see the room go like this and be like, well, that's what we do. Our company here at Rise Up For You is we help minimize those people challenges. We help build performance by teaching the skills that we often don't get taught. And like I started to learn that, like, okay, if I say certain things that leadership falls under, then that is going to help me stand out and be seen. And then from there, it's proving the method, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, how do I get the client interested? And then once you do get a client, it's how do you deliver so well that they stay connected to you, that your method is proven. And then from there, the company continues to grow and build.
So it's so interesting. I've had quite a few coaches, consultants on the podcast. And I'm a commercial banker by trade. So, emerging middle market, 5 to 150
Yeah.
million type of revenue. I write the book based on my own experiences as an entrepreneur, selling a
Yeah.
company in '09, becoming a banker. I always jokingly say that I did the opposite. Instead of going banker to entrepreneur, I did the opposite. But it's interesting to kind of have people that are in your space be on the podcast and hear the distinction of how they differentiate themselves, right?
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I mean, and you did it at a young age. I'm talking about, I just had the gentleman on, I told you off camera, like 85 years old. It's called RSL Leadership. And, he has a certain methodology to his acronym of RSL. But it's typically been kind of that older, more wisdom, more seasoned veterans. So I love that you didn't have a barrier of age. You just said to yourself, hey, I need to take action. And since the market is witnessing the need, I'm going to fill a gap. So I love that part. Anything else that you'd like to share of what made it start to stick with people?
No, I think, and just going back to that comment, I think that a lot of times, from a business perspective, people think they need to be in their 50s or 60s to have the credibility. And I think that one of the things that's really important for business owners and leaders is to understand, like, what are you great at?
Hmm.
And so for me, building a business at a young age at 31 is when I started to build it. But I was wise enough to know, like, I'm a good teacher and I'm a great teacher in these skills. And I knew that about myself. Didn't know business. Like that was a skill that I was like, okay, I need help here. But you have to know, like, where are you strong and where are you not? And then you have to be able to prove it. So one of my first clients ever was a Fortune 5 company. It was like by the grace of God. It was like the first few dollars that we made was by a Fortune 5 company that they saw something on social media and they said, hey, we heard about you and we want to hire you. And I was like, they didn't know that I never had a client. But, I showed up. I put on my self confidence. I practiced every single question that I thought they were going to ask me. That was the
Mm.
teacher. That was the teacher in me. It was like, what potentially are they going to ask me to see if I'm an expert in this field? And I wrote down every single question and I made sure that I was prepared. And they emailed me and they said, we want to move forward with you. And then I was like, okay, step one, landed the client. Step two, am I good enough to deliver? So then that's the next phase, right? Am I actually as good as I think I am in this field or in this industry or in this competency? So then went on site, delivered the product and got rave reviews. And 6 years later, we're still their partner. And so what you have
Wow.
to be able as a business owner to understand, like, it's always growing. There's always opportunity. I'm always getting better every day. Like I'm not the same person now that I was 7 years ago, but was I good enough to start the business? Yes. And I think sometimes entrepreneurs and even professionals, they get too much in their head. This is where I talk about self-confidence, and they miss opportunities because they're waiting for it to be perfect, or they're waiting for the outside validation. And you got to find it within first before you could go out there and make that change and impact.
I love it. I love it. So Go for Show community, listen to what Netta said, right? She literally explained at any point when you make a decision and the confidence is within, you can make that outward, push and pull to be able to attract the right audience. So, all right, you've mentioned a couple times, hey, look, I knew the strengths that I had. I developed these things through some of the tragic things that have happened and some of the strengths that built up inside of me. But I didn't
Yeah.
know business. All right. So let's talk about the business side. I
Yeah.
love talking about it. That's my day to day working with, businesses that are buying businesses, equipment financing, lines of credit, all that type of stuff as a commercial banker. And, I always find it interesting, from a company that's 5 or 7 million, as an example of top line revenue, that wants to go to 15, and they don't really have a distinct understanding that human capital is one of the major components. You could, grow through acquisition. That's
Of
certainly a
course.
strategy as well. But
Yep.
when you think about your organization, Rise Up, and everything you've been doing, and how you started to scale yourself, and sounds like you have, coaches with underneath you that are also
Yep.
deploying the same messaging. What was that first 2 or 3 hires like for you? Because now you had to put yourself in a business owner hat and deploy knowledge to them to deploy out.
Yeah, the hardest part for me that I think a lot of business owners go through in the beginning is getting over that they can't do it like me mindset, right?
Hmm.
Because I was the bottleneck, right? And so in the very beginning, when we started getting more clients, and then I was like, okay, I need more coaches and trainers, it was always like, well, they're not going to be able to do it like me. So I felt that I needed to be a coach and trainer on every single project. But if I'm a coach and trainer on every single project, how am I going to run the business? How am I going to scale the business? How am I going to grow the business? And then also, I never wanted to be like Tony Robbins or Jim Rohn, where I was the lead person, right? So like the reality is that when Tony Robbins passes away, and hopefully he doesn't for a really long time, his conference will never be the same.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? And that's part of the reason why I went a few months ago. I was like, I want to see him before it's too late. So I
Hmm.
never wanted a business that way. I wanted a business where impact could be made around the world and it wasn't contingent upon me, which is why I called the company Rise Up for You versus Natalina. I was very intentional about like choosing a name that wasn't my name. And so what I learned is that I was getting in the way of growing a team because I just thought that I was the best at what I am and nobody can do it like me. And if they did it differently, they wouldn't hire us. And I was wrong. I was wrong. So today, now, 3 years later, 4 years later, 95% of the work we do is not by me. It's
Mm-hmm.
by the team of trainers and coaches. And we still have a 95% repeat client rate, which means that our clients are signing over and over again and they don't even know me. So that's like the best gift I can see as a business owner is that being able to replicate yourself so that you can work on other things that hopefully grow the business. And now where we are as a company is doing the same thing from an admin perspective. Is like, okay, now how do we replicate from a sales perspective, a business development perspective, all the nuts and bolts and the operations of a business to continue to grow.
So interesting, right? So LTV, right? Lifetime value is such a big deal in business because, it's always so hard to keep on churning new business, new business, new business. So to keep someone and to understand what it took to get them from a CAC perspective, right? Like, interestingly enough, in your business, it's not as prevalent, right? If you think about it, typically it's a 6 or 3 month or a 12-month engagement. Sounds like you've had clients for a long time through the
Yep.
longevity of your business. So what has been the glue then in your perception? Has it been always evolving the next iteration, or has it been consistently saying to the decision maker, hey, we're going to have to stick around for this to be a long-term, stickiness of it, I guess.
I think it's a couple things. I think one is the method that we've built because it makes
Mhm.
sense. And all this goes back to being a teacher. When I first started this company, I really started to pick apart the industry. So I would pick apart like, okay, these trainers do this, coaches do this, but there's really not any transformation. How come when somebody goes to a conference, they go for 10 years in a row and they haven't made any change? So I really started to like figure
Mm,
out like, right, we know that self-help world or the personal professional development world where you're reading and you're doing all these things, but you're not seeing any behavioral change. And so one of the things that we're very intentional about here is how do we package content and curriculum in a way that actually moves the needle? And I've been obsessed with that since day
mm,
one. So how do we teach it in a way that's engaging? How do we teach it in a way that's sustainable? And how do we teach it in a way that's simple enough, but it's empowering? So where people can say, like, that makes sense. And then they feel empowered to create change. And then there's strategies along the way that actually move the needle and build the muscle. Because the difference between a technical skill and a soft skill is that soft skills are really hard to retain, especially during stressful moments. And so, what we want to do is build the muscle and we want to almost create the moment so that when it's the reality, they've already been there and their brain
mm.
doesn't go into fight or flight. So, I became obsessed with like packaging it in a way that can actually grow and create transformation. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I learned as a performer, my director always used to say, it's not about you. It's not about you. So when we work with our clients, we always say, like, your success is our success. And if you don't get results, we have failed as a training and coaching company. Because the whole point of training and coaching is to create transformation on your side and to get you results, not just to get up in front of the room and train and coach. And so,
Mhm.
like, we meet with our clients every single month and we consistently do a maintenance check. How are we doing? Are you seeing growth? What's working and what's not? And we pivot. We pivot for our clients because the worst case scenario is we go through a whole year program and they say, it was okay. We didn't see much growth, but it was nice. That's like a horror for me, right? So we want to make sure that as we're working with them, that we're getting good feedback and they're like, oh my gosh, like Samantha is changing, like they're communicating better. Every single month, we have a touch point to make sure that happens so that we can get results and modify if we need to. And this is something I learned as a teacher because I knew a lot of teachers, they would have their lesson plan and that's it. Like, this is the lesson plan. We got to get through it. And I remember being the teacher that said, well, here's my lesson plan, but I have to be prepared to break the lesson plan. If something happens that day at school, if something's going on in the classroom, I have to be able to read the energy of the students and shift the lesson plan so that they can actually learn and retain it. And I bring that same theory into the company.
You're making me think, right? There's a guy, Alex Hermosi, you probably heard of him.
Love them. Number one
So
fan.
yeah, yeah. So, but it goes back to, again, like the transference of energy that you have has been infectious since I came on off camera to on camera.
Thank you.
So you're obviously the same person. Number two, the ability to build a business in your industry and serve companies and to transfer, even like Alex says, it's not going to be 100% of Neta, but is 85% or 90% or somewhere in that range good enough to then build an actual business out of it, right? Because yeah, you could have stayed lean and mean and just yourself and one to many training, all that type of stuff, but it really built a real business out of it. Which so kudos to you, right?
Thank you.
It's
Thank you.
something that has not been super, shown in your industry. So, really
Thank you.
kudos to you. So, all right. So tell us a little bit about the books that are behind you and some of the things that you've created as far as, actual IP for yourself.
Thank you. So we have the Rise Power Up method, which is the four skills I talked about earlier that we prioritize. So self-confidence, emotional intelligence, transformational leadership, and influential communication. Every one of those pillars has its own curriculum and its own book. So you could see three of them behind me, the self-confidence, EQ, and influence. And so each one of those pillars, I wrote a book on it, put strategies in the book. It has its method that we've created here at Rise Up For You, and that's what we use. And then I also have the best-selling book, Rise Up For You, which is just essentially how it all started, my story, why I got into business, I always say the greatest tragedy is wasted human potential. I'm really passionate about talking about self-confidence because it just breaks down so many people and it impacts their life. And so that's essentially, that's the start of it. Those are the books that you see behind me. And yeah, it's been a great journey so far.
I love it. I love it. So, all right, what's in I guess within the way that you teach, sounds like it's a lot of hands-on and a lot of commitment from your company and organization to go lockstep with that client that's on your portfolio of things that you're doing. What has technology done recently? Has AI been something that you've now started to implement? Will it transform IP things that you have so that you can have it in a more video series or anything like that? Or do you want to keep it as authentic as possible to the beginning stages of what you did?
That's a great question. So we do have our own proprietary platform that we built. We call it the Rise
Mm.
Up For You Success Academy. We have hundreds of videos that go in alignment with the books. We've also built our own assessments for each pillar. So individuals can score themselves on emotional intelligence. It whips out a report within 30 seconds. So we've been using technology the entire time, but not to replace. And the reason why I say that is because, again, when it comes to these skills, the experiential learning, so the training and the coaching is what moves the needle. The academy is really only meant to be for repetition and to like keep the
Mm.
retention. So that should be supplemental. The academy is really like, okay, we just did a training. We're not going to see you for another 2 weeks. Go to the academy and, just keep watching the videos and like, keep the content in your mind. It's not to replace the experiential part because experience is where emotion happens and then that's where transformation happens. We're also in the process of building our own AI coach that is well versed and a genius in all of our content. So now a professional can say, for example, hey, I'm going to have to put a team member on a performance plan and performance improvement plan, and I need to have a meeting with them later on today. Can I coach with you how to have the conversation? And then our AI coach will be able to help support the languaging, how to address the conversation, how to do it in a professional yet empathetic yet assertive way. And now they can go back and forth with a coach. That will probably
Hmm.
happen within the next year for us.
And will that be a subscription model, or how are you going to monetize that?
It'll be a part of the academy. So what we do is everything that we continue to enhance is a part of our academy. Right now, our academy for an individual is less than $1,000 a year.
Hmm. So does it form in a way of like a SaaS where a company brings you on, and depending on how many employees they have, that's how the access is, or
Yes.
what is that part of it? Okay.
Yeah. But we don't encourage just getting the platform alone. What we
Hmm.
encourage is like some kind of experiential, and then they get the platform as a benefit.
Okay.
The only time we sell the platform individually if it's an individual because they're not going to get
Oh,
corporate training for themselves, right?
sure,
Yeah.
sure. Interesting. Well, look, that's been really an interesting journey, and I wonder, is there any tricks to what you did? Because were you always thinking like, hey, I need to record myself? Like, how did you get all this content? Because we all have 24 hours in a day, and obviously you built a team, which is great. But at what point in your business did you say to yourself, okay, I need to start capturing this, IP so that I can then deploy it in the future as well?
I think that I love learning, and so I think the thing that really served me is just like constantly signing up for stuff in the same industry. Like that webinar that so and so did, and then like, oh, they're doing a master class. And so I was always signing up for stuff. And I was signing up for stuff not necessarily because I needed to learn the content, but because I wanted to see how they ran things.
Hmm.
And that's also where a lot I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. Oh, I like how they have it in an acronym. And so early on in the business, that's where I started to learn like again the importance of like how to package it all. And so that's basically it. I started to package it, and then the four pillars really just came from experience that I would always look at the data of our clients and what are they saying, and that's where we pulled the four pillars from. It's like the four things that we constantly get asked to coach and train on: self-confidence, influence, emotional intelligence, and how to be a transformative leader versus just being a transactional one where, you just tell your team what to do.
Mm.
And from there, it became what it was. And I was inspired to create, we have a certification and we have a license, and I was inspired to do that by Gino Wickman, who runs EOS, if you're familiar with that,
Hmm.
the entrepreneurial operating system. And I had him on our podcast and I interviewed him. And while I was interviewing him, I'm like, that's it. I have to take these 4 pillars, because we had these 4 pillars, but they were just, there. It's like, I got to take these 4 pillars and I got to package it in a simple way that can move the needle, that anybody can look at and be like, that makes sense. And that's how I took, just like he has traction, right? And he has like a book for each kind of like element there. And that's what we did.
I love it. Love it. Well, selfishly, I'll say, hey, the 4A formula, the 4 pillars. I love four. It's been something in my
Yeah.
life. The Go 4 CEO
Yeah.
podcast with intentionally the number four are, right? And it's been interesting because in my life, that's kind of what came out of the book is I wrote for a couple years. It was kind of like, brain dump, brain dump, brain dump. And then all of a sudden, when I got the editor and I paid for it, right? And they're saying, hey, you kind of write like you speak, so that's not going to work. We need you to write like a writer. And what came out of it was that formula, was the things that I do. And
Yeah.
it's so cool to see because even like your books, the IP that you put together, the 4 pillars now, how awesome is it of a feeling to know that you've left something behind. If you died tomorrow, you have an impactful message that will carry on. And now because you aren't the only part of the business, you and Rise Up will keep on, Rise Up for You will keep on going. So,
Thank
again,
you.
multiple kudos. I keep on throwing you
Yeah.
flowers. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
So,
It's
well,
interesting though, because as a business owner, like I go back and forth. I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. And then there's also a state of urgency that I have that I think a lot of entrepreneurs have, which is like,
mhm.
we got to get this out to more people. We got to do more. Like there's this urgency of like, it's not good enough yet. And I think
Mm.
I'm sure a lot of business owners can connect with that.
All right, so let's dive into your team, right? Your first hire to now where you're at. What are 2 or 3 things that you've learned to be able to say, okay, hey, this person has to come to the organization at this point because now I need someone operationally or someone that will do biz dev more than myself or complementary to myself to grow the organization. What times did you feel that the right person came in? If you have a couple stories of that.
Yeah, I'm still learning. We're still small. I consider under 20 small.
Mhm.
The one thing that I did learn, which I think can especially help in a service industry, is trying to replicate myself as fast as possible when it comes to like being in the business. So the training and the coaching. That I think was very important, because when I was able to replicate a coach or replicate a trainer and see that they were liked, then that took the pressure off of me having to be a part of every training and coaching session, which then
Mhm.
obviously frees up time. And then I could focus on the strategy and all the things that, help grow the business. So that was really important for me. The second thing that I learned, and I'm still learning, and it's difficult for me, is because we're in an industry of personal and professional development, and I believe in people's potential. I have to learn to hire the right person because they're actually the expert, not the person that I believe can become the expert.
Mm.
And if I'm being honest, that slowed us down a little bit. I've made decisions from a hiring perspective where I'm like, I hired them because I believed in them and I wanted them to grow. And now I realize like they weren't actually the expert in that phase that I needed them. And so it slowed us down. So that's the side of like being a business owner and making, smart decisions, and then being a potential seeker and believing in somebody's growth. And sometimes those conflict for me as a business owner in this
Mhm.
industry.
Interesting.
Mhm.
And how have you handled, salaries, value, compensation from a compensatory sales side of things, or
Yeah.
even having everybody in the organization be an advocate for the company as well?
Yeah, so this is something also that we've been implementing is what I realized from like a sales and business development standpoint. that the best people to sell what we do is our coaches and trainers, because
Hmm.
they're experts in it, and they're in the industry, like they're doing it in the trenches every day, and they know how to speak executive language because they're talking to the executives, they're training them, they're coaching them, they're working with the leaders. And so we offer commission. It's a pretty actually decent commission to our training and development team, that, if they believe in what we do, which obviously most of them have a lot of buy-in, to help bring leads or people that they think need it, companies that they need it. And we let them, talk about the product and talk about what we do, because again, they're the expert in it. And so that's an epiphany that I had, because I'm sure, just like many businesses, finding somebody that is really strong with business development and getting out there and building sales and whatnot can be quite challenging. And I found that most people that would walk into the company did not succeed, not because they weren't good at selling or building relationships, but because when a CEO asked them, okay, well, can you tell me how emotional intelligence will grow my team? They weren't an expert enough to talk about it. It's that simple. And so that's another pivot that we made, is training our learning and development team to think about opportunities and then being able to share them with people to bring them on board.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, right? You get caught in these situations if you haven't studied or know your stuff, where you kind of go surface level.
Yeah.
And most people know that if you're not hitting the bullseye,
Yeah.
you're not really the right person, right?
Yeah.
And you could be pretty embarrassing for your team, for your business, for your brand, all that
Yeah.
type of stuff. So it's
Yeah.
really, really awesome stuff. So, all right, look, marketing in and of itself, you mentioned it now, that it really entails the BD side and everything that you empower your people to do. But are there any guardrails, things that you protect for the brand? Is there anything that you've seen out of bounds where you're like, hey, I don't want you posting, maybe your comments on politics or whatever it may be. So is there anything that you hold near and dear to make sure that the Rise Up for You brand is kind of have a guardrail scenario?
That's a really good question. The number one thing that I consistently reiterate to my team in every aspect is visuals. The
Mhm.
visuals of everything that we need, that we do, need to be on brand, they need to be clean, they need to be professional, and they need to stand out. So everything from this podcast, right? The background, the books, a marketing flyer, aesthetically, it always needs to be like at the highest quality, including myself. So, like my trainers and coaches, they know when they get on camera, when they walk into a room, hair, makeup, suit, bright colors, like they walk in as if they're going to a gala, because the reality is that within a tenth of a second, people are making judgments about whether or not they want to listen to you, whether or not they want to work with you, and whether or not they're going to click the button on the ad. And it all has to do with visuals. And this is something that I learned as a performer. And so you'll ask my team, I am a stickler when it comes to anything that's visual, whether it's the person or a marketing flyer that we have on the table, because people, especially in our industry, well, we're the service, right? People are the service. They want to visualize success. And if they pick up a flyer that's crooked, that has misspellings, that isn't visually pleasing, or if they sit in front of a trainer that isn't put together, they're not going to visualize what it is that we sell, which is to
Mm.
be your absolute best and optimal, and to feel successful in life as a whole person.
Hmm. It makes me think a gentleman that's kind of skyrocketed in his own lane, Andy Elliott.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And good or bad, heard a lot of good things and bad things.
yeah,
But to give an example of I've seen in the last 5 years, fitness, right? So I
yeah.
just turned 50.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I'm really thinking offline. I want to share something with you offline, but um, writing this book has made me think about certain things. My that 10 years of in your 40s for me, for guys, for men, for married, for single, whatever it is, but for men in general. So I'm interested in hearing what you think about the women's side. So,
Yeah.
but long story short is like fitness. from an Andy Ella perspective. Like the dude is walking. It's it's same thing with Alex Hermosi. He has his
Yeah.
strip. He's
Yeah.
buffed, but it's like you as especially males, and this is just sharing it from my side of the fence post, is staying fit, active, not going, hey, well, I'm 50, life's done. I guess I'll get a dad bod and my stomach will protrude. And again, not shaming anybody, but it's so interesting what you just talked about. My mom, Colombian background, full 100%, was super, super proud. She would walk out of the house all done up. There was never a time that
My
she
mom too.
was
Yeah.
just in sweats or something. And again, certain gals look great in sweats, right? And stuff like that. But it was very interesting to have a mother that literally I'd be like, come on, mom, let's go. Right. And she was like, no, no, I have to put on my makeup or I have to put this or that.
Yeah.
So like that same mindset, showing up at a networking event or at an event. So I agree. It is interesting because of the generations that now Y and millennial and all that type of stuff, how tech savvy companies and working from home and maybe being casual stuff has it like I honestly, even though I'm a commercial banker, it's funny. I don't wear suits as much as I used to, but going to events, like I just had an event where Matt Doherty, he's an executive coach and speaker that spoke there,
Yeah.
super sharp, right? And it was funny because you could see the guys and gals that have let themselves be a part of the genre of, oh, it's okay, you can just look the way you want to look and not have that crisp sense. And look, like you said, people judge us, right? People judge you, me, and everything of how you're looking at. So very
Yeah.
interesting stuff. So anything to add to that?
No, I mean, it's not wrong or right, and I always
Mhm.
say like be yourself and do you. But again, if you want to be in that top 1 or
Yeah.
10%, influential communication, that's what it is. It's influential communication. If you're going to go up in front of a room or if you want people to work with you, they need to visualize again that success or the outcomes. And the reality is, whether we like it or not, how we show up and what we look like is representation of what's in our mind. It's what we tolerate for ourselves. It's what we allow the standards to be for ourselves. And again, it's not wrong or right, but that is the nature of a lot of human beings. And this isn't about shaming anyone or shaming anything, but it is recognizing that again, human beings want to see the goal, they want to see the outcome, and if they can't visualize that in you, then it's almost like it's hypocritical, right? So just a really
Mhm.
quick story, John. I remember when I was first starting the business and I was speaking, um, I went to this conference and a lady stood up in the audience. She was wearing sweats. She had her hair in a bun. There was about 600 people in the audience. She didn't have any makeup or anything. And the entrepreneur on stage said, "Tell me what you do." And she said, "Oh, I'm a stylist. I will make you look amazing. You will walk out of the house." And I remember sitting there thinking, well, I would never buy from you or I would never ask you because today you're in a room of 600 entrepreneurs wearing sweats, hair in a bun, no makeup, not put together. See, it didn't match. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? It didn't
Yeah. Your
match.
messaging didn't match. Yeah.
Match.
No, it's interesting. Very, very interesting. So, all right, look, as we wrap up the interview, we go over CEO. So client experience, and then engagement is for E and O is for operational excellence. So I'll walk you through this. Client experience from a value proposition. Rise up for you. What is a client going to experience when they walk through the doors, call your team up? What do they expect in that scenario for client experience?
First thing is active listening. It's welcoming. Again, it's about you, it's not about us. And so we don't sit here and try to pitch, right? It's like, what do you need? And then we try to help support through that. And then client experience is transformation. Like that's our end goal, even if they don't work with us as a client, even if it's just a conversation to see if it's a good fit. We always try to add as much value and at least leave some golden nuggets.
I love it. I love it. So Netta, the next one is E for engagement, right? And we talk about engagement, and all different types of leaders
Yeah.
have shared different stories of how they engage. I'd love to hear from you, and our audience would love to hear. Are you a person that likes to break bread and have great dinners? Do you like to go to events? Are you more of a person that likes to be intimate and in the sense of like one-on-one, just conversation and a coffee? How do you engage with your team, with your clients, with the people that are out there in the communities?
All the above. It's all important. And I
Okay.
think you just got to figure out how, when, and to be able to manage it all. So we do like a lot of philanthropic work. We are part of the community. We're part of many chambers. We get out there, we support. We try to add value as much as we can. Like when we are a part of an organization, we always try to add value. So instead of just being like a passive member, it's like, hey, how can we support you? Is there anything that we can do to help support this membership or to help support this community? And then, of course, there's absolutely times where it's that one to one. It's like, hey, I'd love to connect with you one to one, love to learn more about you and your initiatives and where you're trying to go. And so I think all of it's important.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I know earlier you said you're a little bit more not so
Introverted.
yeah, you're more
Yeah.
introverted, but I do like that you have a switch, right? And we
Have
should all
to.
have a bit of a switch, right? To be able
Yeah.
to Ed Milet, who I follow a lot, talks about turning up the degrees in your
Yep.
life, right?
Yep.
And sometimes when you're at 72, you're just kind of chilling. You need to crank it up, right, to 90. And then
Yep.
sometimes it'll come back down, and maybe you need to
Yep.
cool down because you need some rest time for
Yep.
you mentally and physically and all that stuff. So really
Absolutely.
interesting stuff. So always for operational excellence, right? Obviously you have the tools, you've put together the IP, but what helps you at Rise Up for You really run the business efficiently? Are you using Monday.com? Are you starting to implement AI? You said you have an AI agent that you're coach that you're developing. What are the tools that are helping your organization run better?
Definitely artificial intelligence. And not relying on just one platform. So, like for example, I use ChatGPT, I use Gemini, and I also use Alex Hormozy AI, right? Because I like to
Mhm.
see like the differences. We used to use a platform called Airtable, which is similar to Monday, and now we have fully integrated back over to Google Business Suite because it's just so much more integrated. So we use that. We connect all the pieces from an operational standpoint. And then honestly, constant conversation and feedback from the team. Like, is this working? Does it feel messy? Does it feel smooth? Is it chunky? Does it feel clunky? Does it feel like we're overworking and doing things on repeat? And that's important too, because sometimes as a business owner, you get too much stuff, right? There's too many platforms and too much. I'm sure you've experienced this, too many CRMs and everything's all over the place. We go big and then we realize like we don't need all of these things. Like let's just pull it back and let's tighten it and get it nice and clean from an operational standpoint.
Yeah, I've had a bunch of MSP IT guys and gals,
Yeah.
and they talk about it, right? They go into companies when they really care, they could
Yep.
see that the tech stack is way overblown. Right?
Yeah.
You're paying for 17 things and you've been paying for three, or
Yep.
something to
Yep.
that effect. So
Yep. Yep. Yep.
awesome, awesome. Well, Netta, what's the best way to get a hold of you? Do you like direct DMs? Are you a phone call away? How should people interact with you if they want to not only go with Rise Up for You, but directly?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So definitely you can go to Rise Up for You across all platforms. That's our website, riseupforyou.com. We're on YouTube, LinkedIn. We are heavily on LinkedIn, Instagram. So please check us out. But if you want to connect with me, the best place is on LinkedIn. I run my own LinkedIn. It's under Netalina Nasruddin, and you can send me a message and I'll respond. There's no bots there. It's just me.
Awesome. Well, it's good to know, right? Nowadays, it's interesting. This year I'm very, very intentional. If you want to connect with me, I'll look at your profile. But the second I accept, if it's an automatic feed to try to sell me something or tell me what I'm not doing right,
Yep.
I genuinely say, hey, look, unless we're going to get off this off online and we're going to go offline and talk, I'd rather you do like take you off my glory number of
Yeah.
connections.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's interesting that way. So awesome. Well, thank you so much, Netta, for coming on the Go for
Welcome.
Show channel. And
Thank you.
hey, check her out and also subscribe to the channel. Check out my book, The 4A Formula: Untangle Any Challenge and Think Like a CEO. Stories of my life, the entrepreneurship, selling a business, soccer, going into corporate with banking, and then stories like Netta. What an incredible, incredible journey she had. And I hope that you repeat this episode and share it with other people. So thanks again, Netta, for coming on the GoFCO channel.
Thank you.